Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, and we are just jumping right onto the ladder. In the last episode, we tried out a really fun Zamazenta team. This was the highest ranking Zamazenta team in the end of the last ranked season, so playing a couple more games with it today, and it's our fourth Zacian matchup in a row. But I actually went up against, I don't know if it was this exact team, but it was basically the same team with Coalossal, Moltres, and Zacian in yesterday's game. And basically, in the last match, I played towards Metagross, but my opponent prioritized Galarian Moltres and conserved it really well, and I kind of just got wrecked by it in the late game. So today, I'm actually thinking we go with Thundurus. Thundurus plus Urshifu is pretty intriguing to me here, with Pelipper and Zamazenta. So the good thing about my lead is even if they lead like Urshifu Coalossal, I still put on pressure because I actually have Weather Ball on the Thundurus as well as Surging Strike, so I could like potentially switch Urshifu out into Pelipper and then Weather Ball. Although there's a pretty good chance they would just max. Would they actually max flare me? Maybe. Or they could just Volt Whip, but that looks like Incin. Oh, this is so good. Okay, nice. Yeah, this is like what I learned yesterday, because I think it's pretty hard to feel comfortable bringing Coalossal in turn 1 in a matchup like this. Okay, so this is very, very good for us, obviously, because they just activated Defiant. So what do I want to do on turn 1? What can they switch Galarian Moltres out that takes max Lightning? Rillaboom? They could always just max Airstream me here. So I think generally switching... what's interesting here is, do you even click Fake Out? Because if not... Like, you could obviously Fake Out max Airstream my Urshifu, to which I could so easily just switch out into Zamazenta and max Lightning them. And since Moltres I don't think is ever going to be weakness policy here, I'm honestly down for that. Yeah, I'm just going to max Lightning and then switch out into Zamazenta. I think my opponent's lead here is basically a hard call out on me not leading Thundurus, and so by leading Thundurus, I get to punish them super, super heavily. So it's a great example of how you can learn from your losses, right? Because I went against basically this team comp in game 2 of yesterday's episode and struggled a little bit against it. So yeah. Okay, they're staying in with Moltres, which is very interesting. I'm not that scared of it, unless it's a crazy team and it actually has weakness policy on Moltres and not Coalossal. My mind would be absolutely blown by that, but I don't think that's something I could ever really prepare for. And if that's the case, then it's a very cool best of 1 strategy, right? Okay, perfect. They just Fake Out. They didn't even protect. Oh, okay, so with Sucker Punch, I'm sure it's Assault Vest. Like, Assault Vest makes so much sense. Sucker Punch isn't even that surprising on Galarian Moltres, but I guess they're just willing to give it up for free, which is obviously amazing for us, because I just get a free knockout. And now, if you're my opponent, you can bring in Zacian, or you can bring in your final Pokemon. The final Pokemon would be one of Urshifu or Rillaboom. Both are really weak into Thundurus here. So, yeah. So far, so good. This is looking a lot better than the match I played yesterday. And so now what I'm thinking is... Okay, first of all, what they're bringing out. Okay, it's just Zacian. Perfect. No problem. With Zacian, I think what we can do here is just go for a max Airstream into Incineroar and then just go for a Howl. I'm generally okay with that. What do I have in the back? Pelipper and Urshifu. Those are actually 2 fantastic Pokemon to have in the late game for us here, because Pelipper has Focus Sash, so it allows me to take any attack from Zacian and retaliate back with a Scald or even set up Tailwind. Probably Tailwind, because then I can outspeed Zacian the subsequent turn, and then Scald to fish for a burn as well, while also boosting my speed. I like the Swords Dance play from here from my opponent. I think, you know, they're already kind of behind in this game, so got to make a big play or two. But this is also where Max Airstream from our end really helps out, because it just means that I'm just faster than Zacian going into the end game. And I didn't want to Max Airstream Moltres on turn 1 specifically because I wanted Zacian to get a Howl boost off. In order before like Thundurus gets the max Airstream off here, but unfortunately Instin's actually bulky enough to still take it, which is quite impressive. Parting Shot, nope, just Flare Blitz. Okay, so they actually probably end up fainting from Flare Blitz here. Cool. So that's a very quick 4-2 lead for us. That burn is not good though. Oh wow. They actually don't faint. Oh, I don't like seeing that burn. Wow. What is their max option? I would think Urshifu's their final Pokemon. I don't mind max Steel Spiking here. And then going for a Behemoth Bash. It's a +2 Steel Spike, so let's see if they protect here. If I didn't get burnt, I could have just doubled on Zacian for a KO, but I think with the burn, I'm not even confident in having picked up that knocked out. So, rather just get rid of Vincent here so it can't like parting shot and recycle and fake out later on in the game. But, yeah. That turn like could have played out a lot better because we were so close to knocking out the Incineroar. Oh, Bash would have finished that off for sure. Okay, then I should have just doubled up on Zacian, but I wasn't sure about my damage calcs there. I wasn't sure how bulky they were either. Okay, they're just going to Behemoth Blade. So they're a +3 attack, I'm at +1 defense. I am Dynamaxed. See if this actually KOs Thundurus. It does not. Okay, fantastic. So now because we have the speed boost, like let's see what the last Pokemon is. What's interesting is they haven't even committed to Dynamax yet, but my 3 turns of Dynamax are now over. The last one being Coalossal would be so interesting, but I actually think that would just be an instant win for us. Yeah, it's going to be Urshifu. Okay. So you max Urshifu here. Us having Pelipper in the late game is super solid for us, I would argue. So I'm really fine just going for a Wild Charge here and going for a Bash. Yep, that seems fine. Because we have the speed boost on Zamazenta and we outspeed Zacian, we're in such a good spot. They just go for Aqua Jet, perfect. So this is what's interesting, right? My opponent, like, just didn't have a good Dynamax option other than Moltres. And I was actually really surprised by their turn 1 play, but I think it makes a lot of sense because if you're Assault Vest and you can't protect, you can't max guard, and you don't really want your Zacian nor your Urshifu to take a max lightning, right? So their idea was, okay, I'm just going to sacrifice it immediately. And this is a great example of why lead matchups in Pokemon can matter so much, because it was almost essentially won off the lead matchup that we have right from turn 1. So they can Dynamax the Urshifu now. I mean, they really should, but I just don't think they have enough firepower, right? Because here, Urshifu can only pick up damage or pick up a knockout on 1 Pokemon at a time. I can't even knock out Pelipper, right? Especially thanks to the Choice Scarf, or sorry, the Focus Sash. So we'll always Tailwind here just to ensure that we always outspeed the Urshifu in subsequent turns. And I'll just go for a close combat here. Actually, seeing Behemoth Bash if they Dynamax Urshifu would be kind of cool, so I'm gonna go for that. And they actually just end up protecting, so Tailwind works out even better for us here. Protect makes sense just to stall it a turn of Zacian, or sorry, Zamazenta, because we're burnt, but yeah. That's another reason why to click Tailwind, right? Because I don't even think Surging Strikes in Rain would get the knockout onto Pelipper thanks to the resistance. So, terrain disappears, now you can Dynamax, but it's a little bit too late. So we'll just Hurricane, 100% accurate in the rain, and then just Behemoth Bash. And we have, you know, Choice Scarf Urshifu and Iron in the back, so that can just come in and click Close Combat. So, yeah, I think, like, the matchup here is so interesting, right? Because, like, normally you don't really bring Thundurus comfortably into a Coalossal matchup, but if you look at it from my opponent's perspective, it's actually kind of tough to feel comfortable bringing Coalossal thanks to the Pelipper and the Urshifu that I have in Team Preview. So, okay, they're finally going to commit the Dynamax. It is going to be Max Urshifu, but like I said, I think it's a little bit too late. Hurricane and Bash alone, I would estimate, you know, does just over 50%, and then we can just bring in our Urshifu and then just pick up the knockout again, right? And right now, with us having Focus Sash on Pelipper, you essentially need 4 attacks with Urshifu to win the game, and there's just not enough time to get 4 attacks off. Okay, so we're going to get Behemoth Bash off. Great. That is going to go straight into Max Urshifu. It's pretty cool animation. I mainly wanted to see that. And that's honestly not terrible damage. I mean, like, it's obviously not much damage, but... Oh, wow. Is that a crit? Not even. They do end up surviving with, like, 1 HP, but that's okay. And they don't knock out Pelipper either. Yeah, this was a game in which it was actually nearly impossible for my opponent to win just off turn 1 in the lead matchup, honestly. And... yeah, there really wasn't too much they could do with the leads. So this is why, like, Pokemon can be so volatile thanks to Team Preview. And fortunately for us, like, you know, even if they didn't lead Incineroar, I felt okay about the Thundurus lead. But let's say they lead like G-Moltres plus Zacian. That's a much more difficult lead for me to deal with. The Incin was like, not only did it give us an attack boost, but it was also like basically a waste for my opponent, right? Because it just didn't really offer very much pressure. And they were basically kind of stuck with it on the field because you can't really like switch it out. If you switch it out, then you have to knock out the Thundurus, and at that point, they had nothing to deal with Thundurus on the field. And as soon as we got that max Airstream boost, and it meant we could outspeed, that was super valuable as well. So, yeah, super fun game for us here, mainly because we managed to get a super strong lead matchup. And so, yeah, like, you know, I was reflecting on what I could have done better after the second game in yesterday's matchup, and I felt like I didn't have, like, the perfect lead. And it's not to say Thundurus plus Urshifu is a perfect lead, but it's a lead that generally covers your options a little bit better. Whereas had I led with Metagross in this game, like Zama Metagross, things could have been a little bit more awkward, mainly because Metagross, like, doesn't... Oh, I don't know if it's actually even that bad for us, but the main thing is, like, I think we really need to maximize our value with Dynamax in this game, and we really managed to pull that off. Not only do we get a knockout onto their main max option, but we also got a speed boost onto both our Zamazenta and Thundurus, and so like that snowballed really, really quickly. But yeah, let's just look for another one. Second game of the day, and it's finally not a Zacian team. This one is Kyogre, Zapdos, Whimsicott, Urshifu, Landorus, and Entei. Entei's pretty interesting here. Tailwind's a really big issue for us, I would argue, so I don't love seeing that. Our best bet then would be to enable Tailwind of our own via Pelipper. Like, I'm thinking Pelipper, Thundurus, Zamazenta. This is interesting because Rillaboom's obviously so good into Kyogre, but then Urshifu is very good into the remainder of their Pokemon. Can't really feel comfortable dropping any of these three. I think Metagross is just too slow to operate in this matchup. And it's not like we have Max Lightning either. And I want to assume it's Dark Urshifu until I see otherwise. So I think we leave that on the bench. Rillaboom or Urshifu? I want to go with Urshifu, but it's just like Kyogre is such a strong option for them. But I don't think it's a strong max option. And for that reason, I like Urshifu more. Because their max options like in Landorus, in Zapdos, maybe even Entei, our Urshifu, especially in rain, just is substantially better against. So, like, if I'm bringing Rillaboom, it would be basically to counter Kyogre and only Kyogre. That's not a terrible reason to bring it. Actually, the other reason to bring it is to fake out turn 1 into a Whimsicott lead. They go with Landorus and Entei, okay. I mean, that I feel like is amazing for us. Activates Defiant once again. So, yeah. I feel like our opponents just have kind of not fully respected Defiant Thundurus. Although, like, here I could definitely see my opponent having a play to cover for it. But even if you're Scarf Entei and you Sacred Fire me, I've got the Lumberry. So I don't mind Tailwinding. 2 of Weather Ball here, but I don't think a Max Geyser KOs Landorus if they Dynamax, so I just don't think that's worth it. Okay, I'm going to Tailwind. I'm going to Max. And I think I'm just going to Max Airstream into Entei. I don't know if this knocks out Entei, though. My fear here is Sacred Fire into Thundurus into a Life Orb Max Rockfall. Although Sacred Fire wouldn't do that much damage thanks to Lorraine. So one of the plays I was contemplating was actually Max Steel Spiking with Thundurus, because that would give me a defense boost, and that's pretty valuable here. But because of the Lemberry, I can even make this play with more confidence, because I don't have to worry about Choice Scarf Sacred Fire burning me. If I didn't have Lumberry, that's actually like a very strong play for my opponent to go for, right? It's kind of like a coin flip with Sacred Fire, but that's better than nothing, and it would explain leading this into a Defiant Thundurus. Okay, they're going to commit a Dynamax. So, could be Rockfall into Thundurus, like I was saying. That will do a lot of damage, but it's certainly not enough to KO us, I would think. Barring like a crit. This Thundurus also has some defense as well, which is valuable. As you can see, it has some HP investment. So let's see, are you Scarf Entei? No. Okay, interesting. Which means I actually... And I missed out on the KO. I could have actually gone for a Scald there rather than Tailwind. But I think Tailwind's still important here because otherwise, like, let's say I knock out Entei, they bring a Whimsicott, and I don't Tailwind. That actually is really bad for us because then they can just bring out Whimsicott and then Tailwind. But now, I basically just have the speed advantage for all of this game. It's Choice Band Stone Edge Entei. Okay. I did not see that coming. And I should have. Very cool. Choice Band Stone Edge. That's the worst case. I wonder then if I would have even survived. I mean, I was thinking there we could have knocked out Entei. So, like, if we get the knockout onto Entei, like, that's obviously such an amazing turn. And, man, they survived with 1 HP. Behemoth Blast into Scald, get the knockout onto Landorus. Man, that's a bummer. Wow. Yeah, I didn't contemplate Stone Edge with Choice Band specifically. Could have actually gone for Max Geyser into the Entei slot. But they very easily could have been Choice Scarf there, right? Okay, I'm going to Scald and Surging Strikes into Landorus here. Hope that's enough for a knockout, but I don't think it is. It's close. Depends on if they're Assault Vest. Them being AV does make a lot of sense here. Oh, that's honestly really good damage from our first strikes. Okay, I mean, yeah, that's super good damage. I actually think it's enough for a KO with Scald, even if they're Assault Vested. Oh my god, we actually almost just one-shot it there, so it should be. Okay. I think if they miss Stone Edge here, the game's just over. So let's see if they hit it. That's got to be Choice Band, though. That did entirely way too much damage into our Thundurus. Very cool. They do connect. Okay. What are their remaining Pokemon? I'm sure they have Kyogre, but now this is what's interesting. Like, I obviously can close combat and just Surging Strikes the Kyogre. Then the question is that even enough for a knockout? That's why I was saying if it missed, like, the game's probably over, because I'd already given the Pelipper a speed boost, but I'll take that turn. I mean, we get a knockout, force the game to be 2v2, and while we have Tailwind support. And if it's like Kyogre Zapdos, you know, they'd actually enable the rain for us. But I expect it to be Whimsicott here. Yep. And Kyogre. Okay. So with this, I mean, I really want to just go for close combat and Surging Strikes. But one play they could make is protect the Kyogre, right? And Moonblast me. It's not a bad play. I think I will just go close combat and Surging Strikes, especially because I attack through Protect here anyway. And Whimsicott always loses the 1v1 against Zamazenta. The question is whether or not Surging Strikes close combat actually KO Kyogre from this range. And by this range, I mean full HP. Fascinating game. Because if Thundurus survives turn 1, we probably just win the game from there. But they found a great way to deal with Thundurus. And this is smart, right? Like, baiting me into thinking I had a super comfortable lead, but actually having Stone Edge. Okay, so they don't Protect here. They don't Tailwind either, which obviously implies a Moonblast, which makes sense. This is not bad damage from Surging Strikes. It should fall under 50% after the 3 hits. I'm hoping close combat's enough to finish it off. Okay, there's Zamazenta's close combat. Beautiful. Now we win 1v1 against Whimsicott. So, good example of a game where you shouldn't click the, you know, you shouldn't start panicking just because things don't go incredibly well turn 1. I got surprised by, oh, Energy Ball. That's cool. I got surprised, obviously, by the Choice Band Stone Edge. I was expecting Scar for, like, AB Entei, but Band was super strong there. And that was a great way to deal with what I had, but now Whimsicott should not win against me 1v1. If you have Encore, that would actually be really interesting. I think it'd be really hard to fit Encore and Energy Ball into the same moveset, though, because you want Tailwind, Moonblast. Although, maybe they don't have Moonblast. Either way, though, no Encore comes out. And even with Encore, like, Whimsicott's so frail that, like, you can't even take close combat that well, right? And there's the Focus Sash. Okay. Is it just another Energy Ball? Nope, just a Moonblast. Okay. So Moonblast and Energy Ball, I'm sure Tailwind. And then I would think, like, maybe Taunt, just because their Tricker matchup is really shaky otherwise. So that would make sense as a moveset to me, but yeah. They're just going to go for another Moonblast, no problem. And even if they crit, that would not have picked up a knockout. So, cool. Pretty scary game. I mean, it was very, very fast-paced, right? But after turn 1, I had no idea how things would play out. But Zamazenta here was actually very good offensively. And fortunately enough, we had enough damage here. That's why setting up Tailwind on turn 1 was really important as well, because had Pelipper not outsped the Landorus there or the Entei, we would have been in a really weird spot. And so having this late game Tailwind support was really good, because it also meant my opponent couldn't just easily click Tailwind with their Whimsicott and then just sweep me with their Kyogre, for example. So that's kind of the reason why I prioritized it so much in the early game. And it paid off pretty well. So yeah, Defiant Thunders continues to put in a lot of work. It unfortunately fell so short of the knockout. We were so close to picking it up there. And if we pick up that KO on turn 1, it is, I think, nearly impossible for my opponent to win the game, because then I would have already set up Tailwind. I would have had a +1 max move going into turn 2 of the match, and Pelipper would outspeed my opponent's team as well, thanks to Tailwind and the max Airstream. So then I can just like Airstream Scald the Landorus slot, Airstream Scald the Whimsicott slot, Airstream Hurricane the Kyogre if they bring that in. There's basically no counterplay at that point. So yeah, kudos to my opponent though for finding the absolute correct play on turn 1. But fortunately, we had enough firepower, and thanks to Tailwind and Choice Scarf for Urshifu, even though we only got 1 turn of our Dynamax, we also got Tailwind up, and that was more than enough to secure us the victory. So yeah, but let's look for another one. Last game of the day, and it's against another Coalossal team, but this time with Lapras. So interesting to see Dragapult being dropped from these Coalossal comps. Similar dilemma where it's like Thundurus is obviously really good into Lapras. Metagross isn't terrible here either, but I'm mainly worried about Spores from Amoonguss. I do honestly like Metagross as a lead here. What's the main thing I'd be worried about from their end? Maybe Amoonguss into Amoonguss Lapras, to which then I could actually just howl into Max Hailstorm onto Amoonguss. I think I want Pelipper in the back as a switch in case they lead like Urshifu Cole, because then I could just switch Pelipper in. But if I were in their shoes, I'd play towards Lapras. So as a result, I want to bring Rillaboom as my 4th. Yeah, Coalossal still continues to be a very dominant archetype, and even though the Pokemon are relatively standard, there's obviously so many different ways you can run them in terms of EV spreads and attacks and items. And even in terms of the Pokemon, right? Like, you can run Moltres, you can run Dragapult, you can run Lapras. All of those are pretty good secondary back/support options. Instant Zacian. Now this lead makes sense, right? Because it's like, even if you were to activate Defiant with the Incineroar's Intimidate, maybe Zacian just has Swords Dance or play rough to deal with it. I don't love this lead for us. I mean, it's pretty free for me to like protect Zamazenta, max Steel Spike the Zacian slot. What's the play I lean towards the most? Seems okay. What are their switch-ins into Steel Spike? Instin's the only one. I guess no, Coalossal's not even really a switch-in. You don't even actually resist it. Yeah, okay. Down for Protect Steel Spike this turn. Mainly because Zacian is walled decently well by AV Metagross here. My question is, what is my opponent's endgame here? Because it is very likely that it'll take me like 3 turns to just even pick up a KO onto a Pokemon, meaning that, like, if I can get 2 knockouts with this Metagross, I'll feel very good. But this is a pretty good, solid lead for my opponent, and I almost feel forced to protect on turn 1 here. I feel okay with it, like, even if they don't launch a Fake Out until that slot, it's fine. But there's no reason to risk, like, eating up a Fake Out into a close combat. But fantastic play. That is a hard read. Not only did they not click Fake Out, but they also Blade into a Metagross slot. Well done. Okay, doesn't really deal that much damage, so I still feel fine about the turn, but yeah, it's a great read. And here, maybe I actually could have played a little bit more risky with Zamazenta, mainly because of the fact that I don't think Fake Out into Sacred Sword picks up the knockout onto it anyway. They go for Blitz. Okay. So, like, that was the worst case, right? And even in the worst case, it honestly was fine. It wasn't that bad of a turn for us. I am just going to Steel Spike and Howl, I think. Maybe they protect Zacian now, and then just Flare Blitz one of my 2 Pokemon. To which then I could have gone Howl and then just Max Quake into the Incineroar slot. But I'd rather make sure Metagross gets 3 turns of Max off, basically. But this is what I was saying, right? Like, yeah, if I can pick up more than 1 KO with it in my turns of Dynamax, I think that's actually a very favorable trade. Fantastic read by my opponent turn 1, and pretty risky, right? If I actually just Howl Max Quake turn 1, I think it is very difficult for my opponent to win the game. So it was a really high risk play, but ended up paying out because you know, they basically made a really hard read there. Okay, so Amoonguss comes in. That's actually really interesting because it will give me some free Howl boosts and some free defense boosts right now as well. So I wonder if they Parting Shot back out. I also wonder if a +1 Steel Spike gets the knockout onto Amoonguss here. I think it'll survive, but let's see. Yeah, so close. Okay. Another defense boost is obviously welcomed. I would Parting Shot here if I were them, but they do just Blitz again. Okay, that works for me. Fortunately, no burns. Don't think I really want to Howl now. My +3 defense, +2 defense. What is their max option? That's still my other question right now as well. I think I'm okay just Max Quaking into Incineroar here and then just Behemoth Bashing into Amoonguss. Okay, instant switches out. Into Lapras, okay. And they Rage Powder. It's a pretty interesting play. I mean, I honestly don't mind that too much, but it's smart in the sense that they don't just lose 2 Pokemon immediately, right? But in doing so, your main Dynamax option now takes a ton of damage. Like a +1 Max Quake into a non-Dynamax Lapras, I would think does like 50-60%. That's my guess. Kind of comes down to how much like HP defense investment it has. Okay. Jeez, it did even more than that. Okay, that's fantastic. And now both of our Pokemon are actually pretty boosted up, right? I've got a +3 defense, +1 special defense Zamazenta, which can obviously just Behemoth Bash or Close Combat Lapras. Metagross is at +1 attack and has Bullet Punch. I think a +1 Bullet Punch KOs Zacian here. Probably not. But that's okay. They have no close combat switch-ins at this point. I've got Rillaboom in the back as well as Pelipper. Rillaboom obviously just hard wins against Lapras from this position. What's our board state? +1, +2, +1. We should assume they have Sacred Sword until we see otherwise. Because I have Pelipper in the back, I honestly feel okay. I actually don't mind going for Bullet Punch here, and then just a Close Combat. Oh, actually, we want to be careful about Close Combat, because we don't want to drop our defenses. Yeah, Lapras protects, okay. That's fine. They could actually angle towards maxing the Instant at this point. And it is Sacred Sword, and they target Metagross, okay, cool. So this works out well, right? Because now I get a free switch it into Rillaboom. Do I actually want to bring out Rillaboom? Yeah, it makes sense, right? Because the only thing I'm using Rillaboom for is to beat Lapras anyway. Actually, I think it's better to go out into Pelipper. And the reason for that is because they have no type switch-ins with this. Whereas if I bring out the Rillaboom, things can get a little bit tricky because you can just easily pivot Lapras out into Instant, protect Zacian, then fake out the next turn. In this position, unless you crit Sacred Sword, can't KO us, so it's really free to just Scald. Oh, actually, Tailwind's probably better, right? I like Tailwind more here, actually. And Close Combat. Yeah, I don't mind close combating now if I'm tailwinding. So what's interesting here is if you're my opponent, do you consider maxing Lapras? It's such low HP anyway. Yeah, they're going to switch it out. That works well for us. Cool. I'll take that. Also, earlier I was talking about the defense drops, but we were at +3 defense and +1 special defense, so that actually isn't very important. I wonder if they protect Zacian here. Nope, they just Sacred Sword, okay. No crit, which is the main thing. Perfect. Okay, we get close combat off. Not enough for a knockout, that's fine. Key thing now is I can double up onto the Zacian slot this next turn with relative ease. They indeed weren't Shook a Berry, it was just a healing berry. Okay. Tailwind goes up. Cool. Now... I mean, with Tailwind going up, I honestly think it's fine to even just split our damage here. Like, Scald into Incin and Close Combat into it, because Incin shouldn't have Protect here. Yeah, and I feel very confident with Rillaboom in this endgame. What I don't want to do here is double up into a Zacian Protect, right? And allow Incin to get a free attack off. And so few Incineroars carry Protect. Exactly, they go for Protect here. Very rarely are you going to be able to safely defend yourself from this play. So, like, even if Incineroar clicks Fake Out onto either of my Pokemon, okay, well, if you click Fake Out into Zamazenta, then Pelipper knocks you out, and if you click Fake Out into the Pelipper, then I'll still... Yeah, regardless of who you Fake Out, I'll still always get the knockout onto Incineroar. And then Zacian gets the KO into one of two Pokemon, but then Rillaboom can come in and just Grassy Glide to finish off Lapras, and whatever survives between Pelipper and Zamazenta can just then launch an attack into the Zacian slot. So now we can just Scald, and Behemoth Bash. That should be GG. I think what's really nice is in both of the teams in which our opponents had Coalossal today, they just basically never found a position to actually Dynamax. And that gave us a lot of value. Okay, Bash goes into Protect, that's fine. Fortunately, we outspeed Zacian, so we'll get the Scald off, and that'll be a knockout. Beautiful. Yeah, and so, like, this one was interesting. My opponent made a really good read on turn 1, but even with that, we were still in a pretty good spot because I think generally Metagross just had a very favorable matchup into their entire team. So, yep. Now we can just Hurricane and Bash. And that'll be GG. And that's the interesting thing, right? When you lead, like, Incin plus Zacian, you don't have a Dynamax option, basically. You can max Incin, but it's so rare, right? It's typically not the best. Although in this matchup, it actually would have done my opponent pretty well, because you would have gotten... if you could, like, max Flare, that sets up the Sun, you take less damage from me as well, then I can't KO you with the Max Quake, so, yeah. If you're, like, pretty confident I'm going to max Metagross on turn 1, I think maxing Incin actually makes a ton of sense. But either way... really happy to show off what Zamazenta can do in this format. We went up against a lot of like standard high-ranking Zacian team comps, and like this team honestly does quite well into a lot of the common meta teams, right? I think Zacian's not a terrible matchup. Groudon, we didn't run into any, and I'm really sad about it because we've got Weather Ball Thundurus on this team, which is really fun, but that's also super, super handy into some comps where you can just switch in Pelipper and then like max Geyser to KO like a Torkoal, or yeah, just change the weather, for example, with Pelipper, and then, yeah, pick up like surprise damage with max Geyser. So sad we didn't really get that off, but generally, like, I think this team matches up quite well into a lot of the common restricteds, and yeah, we've used Hal Zamazenta a bunch in some of the other formats, but definitely impressed me a lot on this team specifically. Sylvest Metagross is definitely making a return, and then Lum Thundurus was also just pretty fun to play with. So yeah, thank you so much as always for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Don't forget to answer the question of the day, and I'll see you all soon. All right, peace.